So I do want to put that out there because that's very important. But as far as trafficking, there's so many definitions. The best definition that I've ever heard in my entire life, because it spans across all forms of trafficking, whether it's labor trafficking, sex trafficking, domestic servitude, is the exploitation of vulnerability. If someone can find what your vulnerability is, it is very easy to exploit that vulnerability. That's what traffickers do, or predators do, or pedophiles do even with children, is they exploit that vulnerability. They take their time getting to know and understand what that vulnerability is and how then they can meet that need. So exploitation of vulnerability. And it also puts into perspective it then that everyone has a vulnerability, which makes all of us susceptible to it.
I mean, all I can think about is, well, two things came to mind when you were explaining like the difficulties and the challenges. All I think of is the beginning of the Bible, Genesis, how Adam and Eve were ashamed of their nakedness. Mm-hmm. And what do? They immediately try to hide it and downplay it and not talk about the elephant in the room that we're naked. They're just like, no, we're not naked, but we're going to cover it up because we are naked. Yeah. And then my wife and I, Michelle, we went to a Weekend to Remember marriage retreat down in Naples. And one of the books that they were selling by Focus on the Family was a book set for different age groups of children and how to talk to them about sexuality, their sexual organs, pretty much where babies come from. Yeah. And it's broken down. And we were looking at the book and we're like, I don't know if I can say that. I don't know if I can say that to a 5-year-old.
Oh, yeah.
But they said, like, this is not just like some fictitious book. Like, this is backed by science, leading researchers in this area of development.
Absolutely.
And once we started reading it, we're like, what were we so scared of?
Yeah.
Isn't it interesting?
Because they don't know what that is. They don't know that's like,
it's innocent
quote unquote
to them
a potty
because
word.
it's
They're just
never
like,
been
oh, okay,
violated yet.
Right. And we're like, it's such a taboo ish. It's crazy. So, and then, gosh, just as you're talking, so many things come to mind. Like all I can think of is, so what is Redefining Refuge?
So when I started Redefining Refuge, the only premise was to create a public awareness campaign. I mean, I was in finance. I didn't know anything about social work outside of my volunteerism. And so it was to create a public awareness campaign. That was it. That was the only premise. And I remember...
God had different plans for you.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I remember even saying, why is this called Redefining Refuge? Because I didn't pick the name. I didn't feel like I picked the name. Mm-hmm. And I remember even sitting there with my Bible, looking up every word, refuge, and writing. I'm like, I don't understand why it's called Redefining Refuge, because all I'm doing is creating a public awareness campaign. Well, fast forward a few years, the law actually changed in the state of Florida. So they recognized in 2012, this was 4 years into this already. In 2012, they recognized these children as victims and not criminals. And so our legislation changed. Wonderful.
That's awesome.
Win-win, you'd think.
Okay.
Wonderful. These kids are going to go to a safe place now. They're not going to go to jail. And we made the problem worse. So imagine how that feels. So you feel very cold to do
That's
something.
Not awesome.
Oh, it's like the worst feeling in the world. And so what happened was traffickers knew the law changed. They knew that kids were getting put into homes where there were other vulnerable children. And so they were sending girls into these homes to recruit other kids out. So a unique need presented itself, which was to create a program where kids would be in an undisclosed location. So domestic violence shelters do that thing. Mm-hmm. And so we created a safe house program. And then I'm like, okay, Redefining Refuge. And I will tell you that everything that we learned from the children. They were my greatest teachers. And it's hard to even say that without wanting to cry. But they really have been my greatest teachers. I quit my finance job in 2013. Mm-hmm. So everything we learned from them, what services to provide, how to provide services, how to intervene, how to love them where they are and not try to make them go somewhere else. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like if they're not ready, that's totally fine. Just being consistent, learning that you're not Jesus. Can never save anyone, which is such a hard thing to learn, mm-hmm. but that you are there to plant seeds, and if you just do it all the time, they will flourish at some point. But but the kids are resilient. That's why you keep doing this work. If you have seen a case file of a typical kid that comes to our program, if you see one of their case files and then you see them get up and they can still smile and they can still try, how can you not? So yes, but going on there and seeing just, we all shop on Amazon. Oh, I got this for $5. But do you know, and I told Brian this too, like the high cost of the low price. What is the high cost of the low price? Because there is one. Mm-hmm. You're just maybe not seeing it. So I would encourage everyone, you can change a child's life today. All consumers can, because it's driven by consumerism.
Slaveryfootprint.org?
Yes.
ORG?
Yes.
Okay.
Do that, do that, do that.
Yeah, so...
That's, I don't want to not give that enough time.
Yeah.
It is absolutely
critical.
Okay.
Critical.
I'm going to go look it up.
That we get that across. Because one of the first things, because it's not, a lot of children and a lot of adults are not just sex slaves. They are also
labor trafficked.
Labor trafficked, yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's synonymous.
It still just confuses me why the society, when I say society, I mean America, why we're so consumed on cutting down plastic straws and that whole movement of eliminating lids and all this stuff of plastic and human waste and things like that. And it's like, what about actual lives? Mm-hmm. It blows my mind.
We'll spend taxpayer dollars to protect turtle eggs, but not human eggs. But we won't get off on that subject.
No. It blows my mind. I appreciate both of you for sharing this information. It's totally changed my viewpoint of this, and if anything, it's you've convicted me to be a little bit more aware of my lifestyle, if you will, with this slaveryfootprint.org, and just being more aware of this unfortunate reality that we live in.
Right.
And we don't want people to leave this feeling disempowered or feeling overwhelmed, like, oh my gosh, this problem's so big, what can I do? We've given you something very practical that I promise you will help. I mean, your coffee habits daily, your chocolate habits monthly, whatever they are. And also, it is a big, evil, terrible problem, but love is greater than that. You know what I mean? So, like, what's the quote that says, the world's not a bad place because of the people that do evil. It becomes a bad place because of all the good people that do nothing. And so you don't have to be that. You don't have to be a bystander in all of this.